I took a job serving tables at Applebee's. I started driving Uber. And so I would literally be on shoots with guys who have reality TV shows in Vegas and then get off a flight and go serve tables at Applebee's. And I moved in my mom's basement and I paid her $450 a month. I got rid of my apartment, lived in my mom's basement so that I had that, flexibility. Got my expenses down to less than $700 a month. And over 6 months, saved up the $10,000 I needed, bought my equipment, and then I quit on December 28th and started January 1st, 2019, and left behind the business. And they didn't want me to go. They were like, "What's it going to take to keep you?" And I was just like, a boatload of money at this point, because I just had to kill myself for you guys to realize I wasn't bluffing. So, and to their credit, it's in the best interest of companies to gamble that you're going to bluff, and to gamble that you're going to choose security over opportunity, right?
What's going on, guys? My name is Ryan Snaadt. It rhymes with odd, and you're listening and watching the Rhymes with Odd podcast. Today we have a guest that's come in that has multiple names. You might know him as Jeremiah. You might know him as Jeremy. Jeremiah Scavo. Welcome to the pod, man.
Hello.
You are the owner of Scavo Media, and you are I guess you would say, a competitor of mine, but we also are.
Yeah.
So now we got to start it's actually a Rock and Sock and Robots challenge. But I'd love to kind of get a little bit of backstory for the folks at home that are listening. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I own Scavo Media, and we do everything marketing that you could possibly need for the most part. And if we can't, we'll find someone who does, hire them, and then, manage that project for you. So a lot of websites, a lot of digital advertising, a lot of Google SEO, SEM is our biggest thing that we've been pushing, but that's really our little way of tricking you into letting us into the door so that we can offer other services that are really, really valuable in relation to that. So, and which happens, that's where the video stuff comes in, is usually I offer lower priced video paired with a service package of other extremely valuable advertising marketing techniques. And then you can get a monthly subscription of videos for very cheap at a very high level to go along with it. And I make a tiny little bit more money, but not much with that particular upsell. So
that's really cool. I'd love to have you on today because, we were talking probably 20 minutes before we even started hitting record here, but there's so much that we can learn from each other. And I think the competition versus collaboration conversation always comes up a lot. What's kind of your thought on associating with other people that do what you do? Because a lot of people talk to some industries like they don't ever speak to each other. And what's your thought on that?
There's an endless amount of work out there. I even just before we came here, I was working on a project for a client that's out of Colorado that met me through, I got referred through, and I'm not even shooting the footage. They're just data transferring it to me, and with a lesser experienced person that's shooting it, but I'm coaching them, continually helping them get better at shooting, and then I do the editing, and it's a decent little bit of income I've accidentally occurred, and I don't live in Colorado, right? And so, and then I have another one on the East Coast. It's just slowly those regular things build up. There's so much work. It's more about not trying too hard, actually, and not seeing everything as the enemy that makes things work better for you, I think.
Sure. No, I love it. So before we get too deep in the business stuff, I wanted to kind of backtrack a little bit because I don't even know the story. But tell me kind of your backstory. Like, where are you from? Did you go to college? What kind of brought you to do film production professionally? Yeah,
I grew up in Grimes, and then my dad's worked at Drake University for over 40 years now. So I grew up on the Drake campus. He's in IT. He originally started at Ed Media, so I grew up going to Drake games, falling asleep in the TV truck back when Drake used to broadcast them on local television. And my dad was the engineer for the TV truck. So I kind of grew up in it to begin with. And then always had access to technology Drake was going to be throwing away. My dad would just bring it home. So I was always I would describe my childhood as being like YouTube before YouTube existed, because if I had a question, my dad would go and ask the professor my question and come home with a book or the information about what my question was. And you just couldn't get on YouTube back then and do that. Well, technically that's how I was doing it. And so I was editing on Final Cut 2 when I was 12. I didn't quite understand. I had to stick with iMovie, but by the time I was 14, I actually could edit sequences on Final Cut 2, which that might sound silly now, but you got to understand it in 2000 and 3 or 4. That's ridiculous for a 14-year-old to be editing. That's just, I was the one of one in the area, basically. And then from there, I ended up running my entire school district's website, a whole bunch of their media, everything. And they basically paid me talented and gifted. They paid me in A's to work for the school district.
That sounds like a fun combo.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't have gone to college. My entire strategy was like, I can offset a C with this A over here by basically working for the school district. I don't think they would like me to say it that way, but that's pretty much how it worked out. And then
giving A's is so much cheaper than hiring a web developer.
Yeah, exactly. And then I didn't have to do my homework. Like all the stuff that I didn't want to do, it's like, I know I can pull off a C over here. If I just do the bare minimum, I can get C's across, and then I'll average out to about a 3-point with the A's, right? And I mean, and I had a guaranteed A and a whole bunch of slots. But I also did work for the high school football team's video.
Okay.
I started doing that, and then
Did you film games or practices?
Yeah, shot the games, and then made highlight tapes, all that stuff. And then they had a school to work program that the high school football coach was in charge of, and he got me in at KCCI because of that. And so then from KCCI, I'm a senior in high school, out shooting news, driving around in a marked car. And again, no one watches television right now, so it's not that big of a deal now. But back then, the only way you got information was Kevin Cooney on KCCI. Yeah. And so I thought I was a pretty big deal. But so that, and then my whole career just starts from there, because then I'm getting mentored by literally some of the best storytellers in the country at the time. Like per capita, KCCI was one of the best local TV stations in the country. And that's not like opinion, that was like actual fact.
Yeah.
And I got to hang out with them every day. So
that's dope. So you worked as like a cameraman. Did you transition to other roles while you were at the studio? Or?
No, so they would refer to me as a photojournalist. So I'm out with a reporter capturing stories, getting shot at, never getting shot at, but like chasing ambulances, stuff like that. All sorts of just interacting with politicians, like interacting with a whole bunch of very high level things that I had no business to even be 10 feet of, and so it was kind of wild, especially starting at 18. So
sure, that's really cool. So how long did you work in the news sector then before you transitioned to something else?
I did that through college, and I did it for about 7 years, and then I was broke. And so in news, your option is either to go to network, maybe management. You can make a little bit better of a living. Wasn't exactly mentally and emotionally equipped to be in any sort of management at the time. And so it's either go to network level, and then you make really good money, but you work in network, or I find another alternative. And then that's where I ended up. I didn't even want to go into marketing. I was the only video job I could. I didn't even know when I took my marketing job that I would be traveling the country. I didn't realize. They're like, "Are you okay with travel?" I was like, "Sure." I had no idea. I'd be on the road like 100 days a year. I had zero clue.
That's crazy.
I just knew I'd be able to pay my bills with the job, so I took it. Yeah, it was pretty funny.
So where'd you go to college during that time?
I was at Drake.
Oh, Drake. That's right. And then your first job out was like agency role or kind of a...
No, at KCCI. I was at KCCI from my senior year of high school until about 2 years out of college. I did a 3-month stint. My first full-time job was KCRG in Cedar Rapids. But then the full-time job I wanted at KCCI opened up, so I came back and took that.
Sure. What's the biggest difference between commercial film production that you do now and like the news? Because I always notice like they key light them with like a weird colored light. It's always like pink, and I'm like, what are you doing?
Well, that depends on who you're watching.
Yeah, it's like
Courtney Kinzer doesn't do that, but
yeah, sometimes I'll see like they're setting up a key light, and it's like, what are you doing? Or like, what's the thing that stood out to you as like the biggest difference?
So real quick, I do want to address the quality. KCCI won the MPPA National Press Photographers Association's Station of the Year like 8 of the 10 years, or like almost every single year that I was at KCCI, we won it. And by the time I was, old enough to be on actual staff, I even had stories contributing to that. And so our standard for production value was really high. 3-point lighting. I mean, they would even pay to send you to professional workshops to make you a better storyteller, and practicals of lighting, all those things. I didn't actually go to those because I feel like I just absorbed everything through osmosis of just being around these people so much. I actually let someone else go to that training because I was like, I'm already like winning all the awards. I don't feel like I need it. But the biggest difference is that marketing and everything is substantially easier because I remember when I first got my full-time marketing job, had a month to get done what I would get done in a day. And they thought I was just very fast. And I was like, no, this is just really easy. And so that's the biggest thing is then that's where then finding interest in other areas and other skills beyond just video came in, because I was like, well, I can just do this part, like especially testimonial videos. Like
Right.
I was like 3-point lighting, little music, it feels like I've made the exact same video 1,000 times. So
Right. You probably have. I mean, that's somebody, I just had a call today with someone about doing a customer testimonial video. I'm like, can you share some examples? I'm like, dude, how many do you want?
Exactly.
Like, I got like 30 or 40 in the last year that I can show you.
I have
like,
stuff from a decade ago that still works,
Right.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's a process. So what you mentioned, like you kind of grew up in the back of the news van. What was like the first camera that you remember using when you first started?
Well, a video camera when I was really little. Every kid got the handy cam out and goofed around, right? But my dad brought home a digital camera with iMovie 1, very first generation of it. And then skateboarding had taken off right at that same time. And so my friends and I were making skate tapes. And then I remember him yelling at me one time to go to bed because I was up till like 2 or 3 in the morning working on my document, my little what we were producing.
Rob Dyrdek 0.20.
Yeah. And I just hid and waited till he went back to sleep. And then I just kept working. And it was so funny how that, it's like you think kids are being a pain in the butt. No, they're actually creating their futures sometimes. So that's how I started, which I think is actually pretty common for my generation. There was a lot of kids doing that. So
yeah, I know when I started doing videos, it was like Bebo was a thing, MySpace was a thing. Mm-hmm. And we do these little like skit comedy ones, like my friend doesn't have arms, and I'm he's like, I want to play football, but I can't because I don't have arms. And you like gets tackled, and that's the end of the video. It's like something stupid like that.
Yeah.
But that was like 10, 11 years old. We had a little digital like point and shoot zoom camera that the lens is in the camera, stuff like that.
Yeah. I remember I had figured out basic sequencing, and that was a big differentiator for my skill set compared to others, even though I would occasionally mess up the rules. I had a natural understanding of the 180 rule. And my dad's like, you're just not breaking any of the rules and you're naturally doing it. It's kind of cool. And he would show me in the books. He'd bring home textbooks from the college, right? And I was like, oh, yeah. And then a couple other tricks. So then when I'm in my interview, by the time I'm 18 at KCCI with the news director, Dave Buzik, I've got a reel that's nothing impressive, but I'm sitting there 18 years old without YouTube, without the world without a how-to channel for everything. Understanding what basic, and I just figured it out through intuitiveness, I think, and then a little bit of coaching. So it's kind of, now that I think about it, I was like, yeah, there's no way I should have understand sequencing by then, but this is like the most basic thing I always try to tell you, learn how to shoot sequences, but yeah, just stuff like that. So.
Sure. And getting like wide, medium, tight of everything. If you're shooting, like if you have a chance to actually stage things and all the different things.
It wasn't advanced. Like I wasn't moving your eyes. I wasn't, setting things up for payoffs. There was none of that, but it was just how to get someone from one side of the room to the other. Like I knew how to do that already, and you just didn't know yet,
Yeah, no, I love that. So you're working in this agency role. You're knocking projects out like 10 times faster than what you're expected to do. You mentioned like adding all these other skill sets. What kind of things did you add to kind of your belt to kind of thicken up the marketing stuff you can do?
Well, I wish that I had taken art classes in college and I should have majored in anything except for journalism, because I was already getting educated in storytelling at work. And so I should have majored in marketing and graphic design, even though I'm terrible at design, because the first things but to get the job, I learned Photoshop, and I used that heavily. And then from learning Photoshop, learning After Effects, and then taking on 2D animation projects at the agency I worked at, we had amazing illustrators and designers. And so next thing, I brought in a whole revenue stream they didn't even know about with 2D animation before you had the easier services like Toonly and stuff now. Where we would make good money on these huge projects, and I didn't have to leave, I didn't have to do anything. I just had to know how to keyframe, right? So After Effects was the first big one, and then from there I just continually keep learning. When I started my business, I didn't know how to use WordPress. Now I know we sell WordPress websites. I swear, like every other month we were doing a new one. So, but that was post the marketing agency. It was just, you can either become a filmmaker, and I didn't really want to do that, or you can diversify your revenue streams and build a business. And so I was like, all right, that's what I'm doing. So.
Sure. No, I love it. So I'm assuming the agency was your last role before you went off on your own. walk me through kind of the transition process and when you decided to go off on your own and what you were doing in that time.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and I think that the truth is okay. Because I don't want to speak negatively about them, because I'm really grateful to where I came from and all the experiences I had there. But quite frankly, I just got pissed off. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I got pissed off is because I had built this department for them that started out with a $400 camera and like none of the equipment I needed. And even at one point, I bought my own equipment just to show them the value, because you can't win. You know, the best way is to show them, not tell them, right?
Right.
And then from there, they're like, "Oh, wow!" And then they invested more. And and then by the time I left, I was shooting on $30,000 of equipment every time. And I was basically, from my perspective, the one who made all the department's decisions, built the department, was running it by proxy, but never officially in charge of it, and definitely not paid in relation to what I was providing. And now that I've run my own business, I very much know I was not paid in relation to how much money I was making them. It was just, essentially, I told them I want a 13% pay raise, and they gave me an 8%. And they pointed out that most people were only getting a 2%. And I was like, yeah, but I'm providing substantially more value and income than those people, so I should be getting the 13 while they get the 2.
Sure.
And then the position to run the department that I had built finally came open for me to be in charge, and I was told I wasn't ready. And at that point, I just, between the pay, not getting the 13% increase that I thought I was like, now I look at that and it's like I can lose half my clients and still be making what I was asking. That's what I think is so hilarious. No, those two things combined, I got so pissed off. I mean, I was just in rage for 6 months. I took a job serving tables at Applebee's. I started driving Uber. And so I would literally be on shoots with guys who have reality TV shows in Vegas, and then get off a flight and go serve tables at Applebee's. And I moved in my mom's basement, and I paid her $450 a month. I got rid of my apartment, lived in my mom's basement, so that I had that, flexibility. Got my expenses down to less than $700 a month. And over 6 months, saved up the $10,000 I needed, bought my equipment, and then I quit on December 28th and started January 1st, 2019, and left behind the business. And they didn't want me to go. They were like, "What's it going to take to keep you?" And I was just like, a boatload of money at this point, because I just had to kill myself for you guys to realize I wasn't bluffing. So, and to their credit, it's in the best interest of companies to gamble that you're going to bluff, and to gamble that you're going to choose security over opportunity, right? And wait for the ceiling that seems to be there now to rise when they're ready for you to. I was just like, but you guys know I'm like one of them that's dumb enough to actually do something, though. There's no way. I remember the HR lady even being like, yeah, we kind of screwed this one up. I was like, yeah, because I'm like, what do you think I was just going to sit there? I built this whole thing on my own. Like, I dealt with like a lot of really annoying stuff. To their credit too, it's important to add in that I had a lot of character flaws and a lot of emotional. I didn't start doing therapy until about my third or fourth year working there. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the payoff from that didn't even start showing up until in my business even. So to their credit, I think that they were right. I probably wasn't ready to run the department, but I was like, well, in the stand-up comedy world, they say if no one will put you on, put yourself on. So I was like, I'll just do it.
Sure. So, well, and as you're kind of like preparing for your exit, angrily taking 2 side jobs and doing all this crazy stuff, what was kind of your mindset? Because everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, most people never want to take a lack in lifestyle, right? They want to keep getting their 10% raise every year for the rest of their life and get a nicer, bigger house, a nicer, bigger car. What did it take for you to kind of scale your life back and kind of take a slice of humble pie and get where you were? Well, I can literally live in a hole in a wall. Most of the nice things I have in my life are for everybody else. Like, I just don't care. I don't really care. I mean, I like nice things. I have a nice watch, but I don't need anything. And what made all that possible, though, was just rage. You just visualized the person that told you, that accused you of being arrogant and ego driven. And I'm like, no, let's look at, I did the math. I wanted to put a numerical value to how much time I spent in a hotel by myself making them money away from anybody I cared about. And just the first quarter alone, I put my hourly rate to it. It was up to $17,000 I spent of time
a monetary value-ish, I guess, of my time that they were getting, and I was benefiting to a minimal degree from.
Right.
And so I'm just like, I just felt very frustrated by that. So I just like anger of like, I'm going to just show everybody. I remember the HR lady did ask me, she's awesome, but she asked me, do you even have a book of business? And I was like, I'll get one. And so then I just did that. And I also I didn't even factor in how many wonderful people I'd encountered along the way that now, I mean, they're clients, but they're like my friends.
Right.
So a whole bunch of business of people that needed someone who wasn't weighed down by a 40-hour week job just flooded in, and I solved a lot of problems for them. And so it actually went way better, way quicker than I expected. But yeah, just rage, just pure anger. And I don't really care about nice things. So I've actually had to learn how to have nice things. It's like, we grew up with not much money. So I just, I don't know. I drive a 2013 Kia Optima. It's paid for. The struts are terrible. And I'm like, yeah, I should probably buy something nicer, but I don't have a car payment.
Sure.
So why would I buy something nicer, you know?
Sure. No, I love it. I think it's interesting too, because when you left like you said, you kind of left with the rage was pushing you out. Sometimes people are getting pulled, other times getting pushed, other times it's a combination of both. As you went off, I mean, when you first started the company, it was called Scavo Media.
Mm-hmm.
Talk me through, you said it was 2019 when you went full time?
Yep, day one,
Okay.
January 1st, yep.
What was that first 2 years like? Because you had 1 year of kind of your training wheels and then COVID hits. So walk me through the first couple years as you decided to go off on your own.
I started with an initial video client, mostly because video is still a huge, it's probably like 40% of the business is just video customers, right? But it's switched now where marketing makes most of the money now. And I'm happy it's that way because I don't have to lift anything for marketing.
We got to get you a cart, dude.
Yeah,
I'll show you which one I got.
Yeah. But I had one coming out of the gate that I was bringing in a little bit a month. But it only took 8 months for me to get my first client to where I was like, oh shoot, I can already afford an apartment. I was expecting to live in my mom's basement for a year. And 8 months in, I was like, wow, it shouldn't be this easy. But I will say one of the dudes that ticked me off and I was like moving was one of the main like, oh, I'm just going to show him I'm not what he thinks. He did say to me the problem was I was 31 when I started it is that I am way too experienced for my age. And so I think he was saying I'm not emotionally mature enough yet, which I think he probably valid point to him on that. Because I've been doing video production since I was 12. So I was surprised that 8 months in, I was already making a living. And I was like, what the heck? It's not supposed to be this easy. I'm going to get an apartment with a buddy right now and move out, But yeah, so it just went way quicker. And I hit 5-year goals at 3, and I didn't. Yeah, so that's it. The biggest problem is I've not been emotionally mature enough for everything that's happening. Like that guy was kind of trying to hint to me, but then again, I think that pressure has caused me to be like, oh, I have to grow up. All right, keep growing up, and a safe situation wouldn't have caused that. So
sure, no, I love that. I think it's interesting too, figuring out when you have 40 more hours a week to put to the business, things go crazy. Because I've talked with other people on the show, they're kind of about to jump or they don't know, and it's like, yeah, but you're putting it on what you're making from your side hustle now in the few hours a week that you do. But when you have your entire week to do it, that's kind of crazy. Because were you still waiting tables and driving Uber while you were building the media business, or were you doing all of it by yourself?
No, 8 months. Only drove Uber, served tables for 8 months. That's it. And then I drove Uber for fun once, like a year later because I was bored. That was it. 8 months, and then I never had to do it again. And I was awful at both of them, not good. I was barely a 4-star rating.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because so that first 8 months, you finally get to the point you can get an apartment, get your own place. When did you start offering other services outside of video production, and what does that mix look like now, current day?
From the very beginning, I wanted to, and so anything that I was offering, I was doing for myself. The quality wasn't quite there yet, but I could make up for that with really cheap, high quality video, and that's basically how I trick people into doing business with me. Is they would get stuff that people paid a lot of money for at a lower cost, but then we are in a long-term content marketing based contract, and I'd run their ads and what are our goals. And then I remember even the first client had signed on, their first, hey, this is what we're trying to achieve with it, and then actually achieving that goal and then some. It was kind of cool, But it was right out the gate. My first client was a my first locked in retainer client was everything, running their Facebook, Instagram, all that.
Sure. So your current mix or your current kind of business structure is more on the retainer side. It's the longer term relationships, not so much like one-off video production or anything like that.
Yeah, it's subscription services, and I think that's the only way to create. Just even watching how my clients structure their business, it's the only way to create a business that can survive. Otherwise, you're completely dependent on the next sale, as to where the service contracts makes your life and the customer's life easier, because when I'm on a service contract, you're probably going to get more money, more free stuff out of me than if I'm a one-off, because then I have to itemize every single interaction. When I know we have a regular thing coming in, I'm like, you know what? Video's pretty much 100% profit. You know, there's zero cost in most video stuff. So it's like, here's a free video just because we wanted, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Without hesitation. So I prefer the service contract, and I do the one-off stuff, but I try to, like, with a customer that just wants a website or something like that, I usually, if they just want the one thing, I pass them along. I'm like, oh, I don't think we're the right fit. So.
Sure. That's super interesting, because a lot of like my longer-term clients have been like, we've done 3 or 4 repeat projects, and then they just like working with myself or my crew, and they're like, hey, like, we want to do more, let's talk about it. So then you kind of bring up the retainer thing where you're coming straight out of the gate, like, here's how we structure it and everything like that. Outside of just the video production, you mentioned all these other things. Some of those other services, you probably have other contractors that you work with that help run ads or set up campaigns. Like, what does that look like when you're working with a client and you're doing like an ad campaign, for example?
When I'm running an ad campaign just for a client, like, what's our process exactly?
Yeah, so like if someone's on like a marketing retainer and they're doing the video production, but they're also doing ad purchasing, what does that look like for a client?
Just figure out who the audience is, top-down funnel, you know. But depends. That's why we like to start with SEM, is we find out what the market's like. So we push search engine marketing quite a bit, because it's the easiest to set up, the most efficient, and we can get leads or conversion or sales almost instantaneously. And then from there, we get a better feel for like what else we could be providing. Hey, would you benefit from there? Well, now we've got some emails coming in. All right, well, let's re-hit them with the email blast, as well as we can put the lists into the different social media platforms and start hitting them there and get multiple touches and stuff. So it just depends on the client, but that's basically how we do it. First thing is, what's your goal? You know, what are you trying? So one client, and we don't have these issues anymore, was employment. It was highly competitive for their finding people to work for the company. And so we made some really funny ads that they're too old now for me to submit to anything, and I didn't have the sense to submit them back then, but they were really successful, got tons of organic reach, to be honest. But anytime I'd talk to somebody in that industry, I'd ask them if they've seen that ad, and they're, oh yeah, those are you? I'm like, yep, we make those. And now they have zero staffing issues just because of the awareness, right? And we do our best to track them. I mean, I literally look at their employment thing and say, hey, we've got this many employees this week, but it's hard to completely trace it, but we know it. In fact, they laid me off for a little bit and then had to rehire me because they were struggling finding staff.
Right.
So that's an example of like, what's your goal? And then let's see if we can reach that goal. We also run into situations where for SEM, we've had a client hire us, and we concluded that the market just isn't there. Like, no one's looking for what you have. You have to go an education route. You need to raise awareness that this even exists, and that's a lot more money than you have to spend, so we don't know what we can do for you. So that's kind of, I don't know if I'm really describing our process specifically, but that's kind of what it's like.
Sure. No, it sounds like definitely more of a, if we can't help you, we're okay with turning you away type thing. A lot of people would just say, oh, if someone's got money in hand, like, we'll figure it out. It's like, you want to have something that fits well with like the types of clients you work with, people that you get results with. I know off camera we talked about.
Well, I also just want to be able to sleep at night because I don't like lying.
Right.
So I'm like the one marketer that wants to tell the truth all the time. So, which I've run into people who are just like, oh, you're not going to make it then. And I'm like, do you realize how disgusting what you just said is?
Yeah.
It's so gross, bro, but you said it, you know,
right.
Not you, but you know.
Well, and I know a lot of like agencies too, like it's super interesting to me. They won't, like, their reporting monthly isn't good. It's like X amount of impressions. It's like, well, yeah, but we didn't hire you for impressions. We're trying to get a result.
Yeah, they're trying to keep the business without saying, hey, we're failing to get these specific goals. So we have one right now where I just found we're doing their LinkedIn, and they said that they actually want to focus solely on awareness, which I'm like, oh, that's the easiest job for me. You know,
just post something and hope,
we just run these ads and just get those numbers cranked up, and I don't have to do a lot as to where when we're doing lead generation or sales, actual conversions, it's like that's the pressure game, and I don't like to be wasting people. That's why you only want to work with people who actually have budgets. But
right. Well, and the same thing with like organic. Like I was hitting Instagram reels. We talked about this on LinkedIn a while ago. It's like hitting vertical really hard earlier in the year. I think I was, for 6 months, I had a firm that was doing all my editing, so I could like just get that off my plate. Mm-hmm. I had one video that went off. It was like 300,000 views on Instagram, but it was about my business process, about like editing social media clips. And it's like, yeah, 300,000 views, whatever. But it's like the amount of comments and then DMs I had from business owners that were like, can we hop on a call? Let's talk about this. And then you get to the sales table with like 3 or 4 people, and they're talking about huge retainer projects for like tens of thousands of dollars. It's like that turns into conversion. That's the result. You're talking about like organic can get you, or with the hiring side with your recruitment company, you talked about like, well, now applications went from 5 a week to 50 a week, and now we can't stop. We had to turn the water hose off. We had to take the listing off Indeed or whatever. It's That's what
literally
you want.
What happened is they don't need any employees now.
So like that helps just kind of give the empowerment there. I think that's super cool. We talked about too. It started as Prog Media. You transitioned to Scavo Media. Talk about the rebrand, and then we also said like your name's Jeremiah, but people called you Jeremy. Like, are you just the two-faced man? You got 2 identities, or you got like different? What's the deal with the rebrand?
I think the real story of it is I never wanted to start a business to begin with. I just had a job that ticked me off and forced me to create my own ceiling. I would have been especially if I had gotten married and had kids, I wouldn't be sitting here like that. That just didn't happen. They were probably bummed out that I didn't get married that one time I almost did. Like, I just anyway. So you can't just sit there. You got to do something. But to start the business, I just Googled how to name a business, and it said to either name it according to what you do or a word that means something to you, that's important to you. And right now, I think that people just make up words because we've run out of words to name things. What are you going to do, the Beatles? You can't, all the words are taken, so people are making up words.
Especially SaaS companies, they're notorious for just making up a word. It's like, welcome to Exolotron, Lovoskovich. It's like, what?
There's no words left, so you have to make them. Prog actually comes from prognosis, and so a word that meant something to me was actually in 1 Peter. It's the word foreknowledge. It's from the Bible. I used to be a Christian. I'm not anymore, but used to be not religious right now at this point. But it means foreknowledge, and it's translated from the Greek word prognosis, which is about the outcome of disease or whatever. Is this long? Too long to explain view of fate and how you don't have control of it. No matter what, it's acting as it's going to happening as it's going to happen. And the most important thing we can do in our lives is accept it.
Yep.
Right. And that not like don't do anything about it, but accept it as in this is how the dice rolled, and now I move forward accordingly. Right. And so it's this deep thought on that from years ago that had no desire to put into an ad campaign after I'd already registered my LLC. So a mentor suggested I just shorten it to Prog instead of prognosis. And I was like, great idea. Mm-hmm. And so I went with Prog Media, but the entire time people would be like, what's that mean? I would be like, it means Prague. Like, it doesn't mean it just needed to have a name. I don't care.
Yep.
And then I just got tired of that. So you switch it to Scavo Media. Well, it's a cool sounding name. I've been told that my whole life. It's and it has some equity here in town to begin with. There's actually a high school named Scavo.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, plus my last name plus media, it says it. No one's going to be asking me what my company name means anymore, and I don't have to deal with that anymore. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to switch to that. It's way easier. I was also concerned that people would never want to work for my last name, because then they wouldn't buy in as ownership. And I found that people don't care as long as you're paying them.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I didn't need to worry about that. So that's the story of the name. And I just was like, a mentor, I told him, hey, I think I'm going to switch to Scavo. And he's like, yes, do that now. You can still do it. You're still young enough. It's still soon enough. Just switch it now because you're not going to want to deal with that later. And so I did.
Yeah, I totally get that. Because I know when I was looking at doing my business name, I'm like, I kept kicking myself. I wanted to name it something cool, like something video production, whatever. I ended up settling on Snaadt Media Group because I'm like, I want to make it just general media because it won't always be video. There could be marketing, there could be photo, there could be web, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then the group side was like, my goal was to have a small team at some point, like 5 to 6 employees. So it's like, that was in alignment to like name it what I wanted it to be in the future. But you can always set up a DBA if you really want to.
Yeah, and I didn't know when I started it, I didn't know anything about running businesses. I had mentors like teaching me as much as the free info that they would give me. I wasn't paying anybody for that advice, which I think is not necessarily a bad idea. But I just didn't know about DBAs. I didn't know about so many of these things that I'm like, wait a minute, I can have 20 names if I want to. So
sure. One of the things that stands out to me when I always see your marketing, it's like you use your corgi as kind of a fun quirk, and then also the joke side, which we can talk about in a second. So what's the story behind putting a corgi in your ads?
Yeah, her name's Deborah. I got her. She just turned 7, like a couple on the 15th actually.
Okay. You guys have a birthday party and candles?
No, she doesn't know. So
she can't speak English?
Yeah, no.
I didn't know that.
She might know. I don't know. She's pretty smart, to be honest. But she's just an adorable corgi that I bought years ago. I had no idea how powerful dogs were. I just always joked about buying a corgi and naming her Deborah. And then I can't even tell the joke because there's a curse word in it. But it was a funny joke, I would say, when hanging out with people. And then one day I just impulsively bought Deborah. And I showed a photo of Deborah to this barista one time, and the barista started crying. Because she was so cute. And I had I'm telling you straight up, had no clue that dogs had that effect on people.
Oh my gosh.
I never really even liked dogs that much until I got her, and then she became this therapist / coworker. And then I was like, for basics of advertising is cute dogs, kids, or attractive people. And so I was like, all right, well, I've got an easy access to one of those, so I just used her in the advertising, and I made her my vice president, and she's a highly successful woman, and just playing that whole hilarious little thing. Then, just basic After Effects, making her mouth move and stuff. So
that's really fun. I always think it just, again, babies, dogs, and like you said, attractive people will always get sex sells, but so does dogs and babies.
Nobody has to be smart to do marketing. That's the thing. It's like, it's pretty intuitive. Some people try to make it out like that's, things are smart. I was just like, nah, I don't, cute dog, huh? And then they'd be like, yep, you have my attention. What? All right, what are you selling me? So...
Right. No, I love it. Okay, so this is our break in the action here. We're going to do the lightning round. We'll throw some game show music in here.
Cool.
Just to kind of break it up a little bit. I wanted to ask you some quick fire questions. First thing that comes to your mind, if you want to elaborate, you can. If not, we can just leave it open-ended. But first question, where's your favorite place to eat in Des Moines?
Latin King.
Okay. What's your favorite dish when you go there?
It's the ravioli, but it's not. There's 2 different kinds. I can't remember, but it's the ravioli.
Okay. Good to know. We'll put that on the list there. Dream car. You mentioned material things aren't your big thing, but what's your dream car?
Okay, one time I was on a shoot in California, in Orange County. No, not Orange County. Where is it? Something Beach. Where all the really rich people live.
Huntington Beach?
No, it's near Huntington Beach. Anyways, the guy sold his first company for $150 million. He made sure to mention that in the first hour we were hanging out,
right.
That kind of guy. And he joked about buying me a McLaren down the street. And I go, I'd rather have a hatchback. And he was just aghast. And I was like, well, for video production equipment. So I actually want to get a BMW X3 though, that has the hatchback, but then it still functions like a BMW, so it looks fancy. But I do actually want that. I'm not going to buy it. I'm probably going to buy a Kia, but because it makes financial sense. But I do want that. My girlfriend keeps saying, just get it. And I'm like, in time. Maybe I'll get that at some point.
No, I'd love it. What color?
I think white or black.
Okay.
Black with black rims would be cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. If you could have coffee or a meeting with anyone like influential that's still living, who's somebody that jumps out to you that you'd want to spend 30 minutes with, just kind of chatting their ear up a little bit?
Pauly Shore.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. I love Pauly Shore.
What's the movie he's in where he's a GI cadet and he has to lose a bunch of weight?
In the Army now.
Yes. Yeah. That's like the last time I've seen him in a movie before.
I don't even know who I'd want to hang out with because Steve Jobs died, and I read his biography, and he's kind of a psycho, so I don't know if I'd want to hang out with him anyways.
Yep.
I don't know. Probably one of the presidents.
Okay.
any of them, to be honest, just to talk about the pressure of that position. And then you want to talk about a professional marketer.
Sure.
Like if you want to learn how to do sales, like that's the person to talk to. So
Sure.
probably want any of them, honestly, legit, any of them. Yeah, any of them, just to get a sense for what they actually think.
Sure. Is Dwight Eisenhower died, didn't he? Or is he still alive? He might be like 100 years old now.
I think the oldest one is, I can't remember his name.
George W. Bush Sr.
He's passed. No,
He passed
it was
away?
before Bush. Yeah. Anyways, there's a few of them. Like Clinton. I'd hang out
Yeah.
with Clinton.
Yeah.
I decided to talk about a salesman right there. Yeah. I would hang out with
I've
him.
met Bill Clinton before. I didn't meet him. I saw him. His wife was campaigning when I was going to college at Simpson, and she was there, and Bill just walking around campus at like 7:30 in the morning. I was going to class.
You just talked to him?
And I saw him across the thing. I'm like, holy crap, that's Bill Clinton. And he's like, hi. And then I found out he has like a photographic memory. So like he probably remembers me because
he's like a genius.
like people will talk to him and meet him like 10 years later. He'll be like, oh, hey, Jeremy or Jeremiah, which one do you go by? You're like, how does he remember me? Like it's one of those types of people. So that's a good,
Yeah.
I would say Bill, that'd be an interesting one.
Yeah.
How old are you?
36.
Okay, so what would you say was the biggest PG mistake of your 20s that you ever made?
Oh, biggest PG mistake of my 20s. Dating someone too long that I didn't want to, almost marrying someone that was, we weren't the right fit and not ending it when you immediately. I don't know.
Sure.
I feel really bad if you ever watch this. I'm sorry that I mentioned it. She's a wonderful person.
Sure.
And I was the idiot, not her.
Sure.
So,
No, that's a great little piece there. With the last one was, what's your favorite hobby to do outside of shooting videos?
I don't. My dogs just take. It's pretty boring. I don't really do much. Oh, we like to travel. Oh yeah. My girlfriend and I, we go on lots of trips. We're going to Costa Rica here soon.
Okay.
And then we're in Rome, and then we're working on figuring out where the next place we're gonna go.
Okay.
I'm not really into it, but I like in the typical sense. But I enjoy how much everybody else gets a kick out of it. So there's that.
Sure. Well, and finding new things you can do when you travel is always fun because then, like my wife and I went to Greece, and we like stumbled into like hiking this huge gorge for like 10 hours. We're not huge outdoorsman people, but
Yeah.
it's a fun thing. Now, whenever we travel, we go hiking because it's like kind of a fun thing to do. So you learn.
We ride horses. We rode horses on the Appian Way. I actually did want to go to Rome, and like it was amazing. I just love Roman history. But apparently there was a TikTok trend about that, and I'm just a stereotype.
The more you know.
I didn't know this till I saw that, but my girlfriend thought it was hilarious because she's like, I reference the Roman Empire constantly in conversation. Like we'll be talking about how to manage our finances, and I'd be like, well, the Romans. And it's like, and then that trend to come out, I was like, I don't that's our hair. That's Western civilization. What do you want?
Yeah, somebody like, what's he must be talking to some other girl and he's Googling like, what was Julius Caesar like when he was running the,
I know, right? We couldn't find his gravesite either. I spent like an extra hour in 100-degree heat trying to figure out which spot was the gravesite, and we just missed it. I think we walked right by it and didn't realize it.
That's crazy. Well, and earlier you had said, so we're done with the hot seat now.
Okay,
That's good. I know you mentioned like you had an interest in comedy when you first got into the business. So tell me a little bit about like where that comes from and how it plays today.
Well, one, it led to me having somewhat of a bad reputation because I would do it was like an Andrew Dice Clay type of character, but way worse, like obnoxiously worse. And there was a hint of truth in it, but it was mostly me being obnoxious for the sake of being obnoxious and getting laughs. And so it had some reputation consequences that I'm still, I think, dealing with to this day. But I actually learned how good I was at things or valuable I was to situations from doing stand-up comedy because we started producing comedy shows. And I was a part of a podcast, a show that still goes on and is very successful in town right now. It didn't work out, wasn't the right business partner. I had to back out because it was pretty clear that we weren't going to be the company I own now, we were going to start it together. The guy that I was doing this stuff with, we just weren't the right fit for each other. And so unfortunately I had to back out of it. But I mean, our first show had 100 people show up, and in Des Moines, that was insane. And then, it now sells out 400 every time at this. Cow. Yeah.
So is it a comedy club in Des Moines?
I don't want to get into specific details. I did run ads for Teehees for a while while Sid was still in ownership there, but it's extremely successful, and I was at the beginning of it, so I can't take credit for where it's at now, but the starting point, I started running content I explained to him content marketing, started running ads, learned Facebook, retargeting, lookalike audiences, how to really narrow it down, just how to making an ad look like it got way more attention than it did by running it in cheaper countries. Like just things like I remember running my friends in foreign countries, just thought it was so funny. But anyways, we saw a lot of success on this, and I was like, oh shoot, I can take this exact formula, apply it to a business, and start my own business. And then, that not working out I didn't really enjoy that. I don't think anybody enjoys finding out that you're not going to be the right fit business-wise with each other. And that paired with my company that I was working for saying, hey, we're not going to let you be in charge of this thing you built or give you the money you deserve. I had two of those things simultaneously happening at the exact same time. And so that's also where a ton of that rage came from. But yeah, I told jokes too. I just wasn't very good at it. So I was more stage persona, and like everybody would be like, you sound like Charlie Day, right? I got away with a lot of stuff because of a lot of factors. But the jokes were just I write jokes still, but they're just not that great.
Sure.
I have a good one though.
Okay.
This one's clean. It's PG. It's I was watching this show where terrorists blow up the Capitol with killing all the politicians inside.
Okay.
And I was having trouble buying into the show because it just doesn't seem very realistic. Like there wasn't a single parade or celebration afterwards.
Okay.
Right. So it's not a killer joke, right?
Right.
But for me, it takes so much for me to be able to actually write a joke like that. And I learned that from stand-up. But I've been trying to write one joke for a month, and that's the only one I've written.
Yep.
Right. And so good comics, on the other hand, would take that and then add like I can't do that. So I was never actually good at the thing. I was just good at shaking my tail like a corgi.
Sure. Well, I think it's interesting because you can take that skill set and put it in video script writing, right? Or if thankfully, if somebody wants a funny video, you're like, thank God, I can finally channel this energy into something that will pay me.
Yeah, and I think that being funny and being a good stand-up comedian are much different things. So being funny is kind of easy, and it helps you learn how to do that. Having funny friends that you can hire to write stuff for you is extremely valuable. I do that all the time, where I just say, all right, guys, here's X amount of dollars to each of you. Pitch me 20 ideas that are funny so I can go to this person and pitch them like they're mine,
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And learning if it doesn't need to be there, then get rid of it. When dealing with a crowd, especially watching someone try stand up for the first time, they will go up and have all of this setup. When I told that joke I just told, there was a little chunk of setup that didn't need to be there, and I added it in. Learning to get rid of that so that you can get to the punchline, you can get to the joke, you can get to the point as efficient as possible. In modern advertising especially, it's extremely valuable. So it's actually a really good skill to learn because so many times you see you guys just go and explain or go and set up for 5 minutes, and then there's actually a funny punchline, and you go and explain to them, no, just get rid of all that and then tell the punchline with these 2 words. It just takes a while, but once you get that, I think you can work in advertising. Like you can work in anything. So,
well, and I think there's so much value in for stand-up comedians particularly is you deliver the punchline and you immediately know if it hit or not. As a marketer, you have to look at the analytics. Like if it's dead air out there, and you can quickly, like you said, kill it, go to the next thing. But then also, if you have to explain a joke further after the punchline, it's not a good joke. Like you have to be able to.
Yes.
Everyone arrives at the point, the destination at the exact same time, and we can all laugh together. So I think that's the piece. But there's so many comics out there now that are like super big. Like who are some of the people that you like watching or for stand-up specials?
I didn't watch a lot of comedy. I never watched. I mentioned earlier, I used to be a conservative Christian. I'm not anymore. Full support of anyone who believes anything. But I wanted to be a pastor.
Okay.
And then I left that whole world. And so I was like, oh, stand-up comedy, I could do that. All right, let's give that a shot. And then so I just took that same thing and put it into stand-up comedy, and it wasn't exactly the best fit, but it kind of worked. But yeah, so that's kind of how it started. What were you asking exactly?
It was basically like what comics are some of the ones you like to watch?
Yeah, so I like Bill Burr.
Okay.
He's
a good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Right?
Yeah, no.
Whenever someone asks me that, I always just say Pauly Shore because I genuinely like Pauly Shore. He's actually a pretty okay comic. And they always don't think I'm being serious, but then I don't have to answer that question.
Sure. I think my favorite lately just been Shane Gillis. He's been killing it, but it's like anything I see on social media of his, even from specials I've seen, I always stop and watch the whole thing. Or
he's very funny too. He's one of those guys that's actually funny, unlike myself. So.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting where comedy's gone, because before it was very scripted, like set up jokes, but now it's almost like storytelling with the funny twist, which is what I appreciate, because people will tell me I'm funny, but I just tell stories of what's happened. Yeah. But I usually embellish a little bit and then make it kind of funnier. But there's been some crazy stuff that's happened in my life that I'll like recollect a story, and I'm sure my wife's tired of hearing it, because it's like you told this joke like 100 times, but when I get with someone I've never met before and I have like my entire Rolodex of like stupid stuff or funny stories, like things will come up, any topic, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a really funny story I have to tell you. Yeah. And then it becomes funny. So it's like, I think that there's just different levels to it, you know?
Well, it just depends on I think that, again, when you see people first trying to do it, they'll start out with those long stories, and turns out you can actually take those long stories and turn them into a very short joke. Mm-hmm. Like you just ask, okay, there's the whole setup for that punchline. Is there a way to say that in 4 or 5 words? Is there a way to shorten that setup to a sentence? And then we can that punchline that works every time. We can say that punchline in less than 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. How much better would that be, right?
Sure.
So you see the high level people doing those longer stories and stuff. Those are people that have been telling jokes on stage for years, and so they're planting jokes, planting seeds, pacing, almost as if you're watching a movie. Mm-hmm. That's perfectly paced and timed out. And so they're able to do that. But I would argue that's when you're getting into mastery. That's like someone who just learned sequencing. It's like, okay, you're not to color grading that yet, though. You know, like you don't. Let's just get your colors right. Mm-hmm. You know, does that make sense? Like that's kind of how I always see it. So
well, and finding the right pacing, I think, is huge. Like I always joke with my wife, like her setup is always way too long for any story.
No, yeah,
it's like,
me too.
It's like what you got to do is like I'll start with a hook, like, oh my God, did you hear so-and-so died? And they're like, oh my, really? And now they're in. But it's like, today I was reading the paper, and then I went to this section, and then I saw this, and I saw this, and then I saw the obituaries, and then I saw this happen. It's like, you've already lost the audience. I still listen to my wife, but I'm just an example. It's like, if you can figure out how to hook, and then you've got a good maybe 2 minutes that you can do a really good story, but you got to really just like hammer it home. I think that's huge.
That's Netflix model for showing the end of the series at the beginning. It's the TikTok model, hook at the beginning, right, to get them to pay attention. Yep. And you're basically telling them at the signaling there's a payoff coming, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just have stopped doing that storytelling format when doing stand-up, because I wanted to learn can I just tell jokes, you know? Mm-hmm. So, but with what we do, though, it's perfect. So.
Sure. No, I love that. I know most business owners I'll bring in are doing other things outside of their primary business. I know we talked a little bit off air. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing with the real estate stuff, like the advice that you got from a mentor, and kind of how you're applying that to your renting stuff. Yeah, so a mentor of mine told me to buy a house 3% down with I think it's the FHA loan. Yeah, yep. Yeah, and you can actually take advantage of that more than once. So and then live in it for 2 years, and then you don't have to pay any capital gains on the property, so you don't have to get taxed on you making profit because you lived in it as a home. Then turn that house into a rental, buy the next house with an FHA again, and just keep scaling up. And this is like the best house hack. And so that was several years ago. No, that's probably like 4 or 5 years ago. I was told to do that, and I don't know anything about anything. This particular mentor has done very well for themselves. And so when they tell me to do something or hand me a book to read, I read the book and then I do what they say. And so I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad like he told me to. And I immediately put that plan in action, and it took me about 2 or 3 years, and I bought the first house. And literally in the next few months, we need to pull the trigger because the market's about to go wild, I think. So we're trying to get the second house going. So... Sure. So in that first time when you were fixing it up, did you also like rent out a room or two while you were there? Like, did you house hack it while you were there? I spent too much money, honestly, because I built a in-law suite downstairs. So there's a full kitchen, bathroom, everything in my basement that could be rented out as an apartment. And that ended up costing me a lot more money than I realized. So I think that I'm kind of I'm not underwater because I'm done okay, but I think I'm at a loss still, because I just wasn't smart the way I did it. But then again, I didn't have to pay my mortgage for several months either when I had someone renting it out. Now I don't have anyone renting it out because my girlfriend and I live together. But yeah, I did that for a bit. And then, so I won't do that one again. Or if I do that, I'm going to do it way cheaper than I did it. Sure. Things don't need to be near as nice as you think they do.
But yeah, that was the one. The next one we're gonna do is just a generic regular house. The two of us will be living in there, and then hopefully that in-law suite makes this house a little bit more enticing for the right customer, right? Which in the neighborhood it's in, I think that it will be. So we'll see.
Sure.
Hoping to get a little cash flow.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you have that renter paying for your mortgage, one, that's great. But then, like you said, when you go to sell it, you can make a profit on the appreciation and all the stuff, which is also nice. Because I know a lot of people say too, if you're in the situation where you're not married to your spouse yet, they always say like she should go get one like on an FHA loan too. So it's like there's all that talk about that too.
Yeah, mortgage fraud, Right. Yeah. No, but we got a girlfriend that this is a long-term deal. So we are planning, we have a mindset together on what we're going to do. And, but nothing wild like that, trying to stick to the book, but play the game as best we can while we're doing it. So,
because you're wanting to sell the house you're in currently, or are you wanting to rent it out?
No, rent it out and then long-term equity. So I don't think the profit is on the cash flow, because you don't really make that. I mean, you made a couple $100 a month, right? It's in the equity and the sell off in 30 years, or in 10 years or whenever you're ready to unload. And then that's the profit. Technically the house could lose value, but as long as you paid the principal down enough, you get the difference and you still made a profit. Right. So that's where profit is if it's a rental. And so they're basically covering the interest of the loan for you. Right. And as long as your return's greater than what you put into it, well, you're at a profit. Right.
Right.
So that's my goal. And maybe I don't know, we get the 5 houses and then we unload it and buy a vacation home. I don't know. We'll see. I'm so not good at housework and learning how to do that. I mean, I do floors now, but it gives me carpal tunnel. I can do a lot of stuff, and I have guys that I hire that are really a good price that I bring in regularly to do stuff, But it's been definitely a learning curve, and then I honestly just don't like doing the work. So there's that factor too. It's like I learned drywall. I don't enjoy that though. I actually mudded it, and it looks okay though, but I don't enjoy it, So it's do I want to do that? Do I want to do that, or would I rather just sit on the couch and dealing with that, that thing? But at the same time, it makes decent money, so probably keep doing it.
Sure. Well, I know my wife is super into interior design, carpentry. Her dad is an industrial tech teacher in high school for years, and she learned the trades, loves all that stuff. If I was single, I'd probably live in a loft downtown.
Yeah,
exactly. I don't care, but she's really into it, so I'm always like, if we can get a rental house that you can put your time and effort into something that will actually make us money.
And it's fun for her.
Yeah.
And she she can come do stuff for me. You guys want a percentage of it? Jeez. Right. Yeah. Because it's very hard. It's very detail oriented. You have to, fortunately renters don't care that much, but they're also going to destroy it. So you want to do a good job so that it's, sturdy.
Yep.
But
and finding the right structure. Cause what you're talking about is more of a couple years down the road, like you said, when you're ready to unload, and there's a plan there where some people it's buy and hold with long-term renters, other people it's Airbnb, other people it's semi-short term. I was telling you before as well, we sold our previous furniture to a guy that was furnishing a Airbnb for travel nurses downtown. So he's doing 4-month terms, but the hospital's paying the bill and they're making $170,000 a year, so they don't care.
Yeah.
And they're only there for 4 months, and it's usually a single gal. It's the perfect renter for that scenario. Yeah, so there's all these little sub niches of people.
Yeah,
so.
I would ideally actually get a vacation home that we rent out for most of the year would be very cool, because we like going on trips. But if there was something consistent and easy, especially once you have kids, Yep. And then the cost of a rental, the cost of the rental when you're going somewhere is most of your costs other than flights. So you get that taken care of. It's basically a sophisticated timeshare.
Yep. Well, there's so much turnkey software and systems to put in place. You can do automatic doors, you can do cameras, you can have an on-site maintenance person or a cleaner, and it's you don't have to be in Fort Lauderdale or LA or wherever. It's you can go live in Iowa if you want and have the lower cost of living. It's freed it up. I think Airbnb has completely leveled the game out, because now there's a marketplace you can find.
I heard that the Airbnb was tanking, but I don't believe it. I just think that it's tanking in certain areas probably, but.
Well, I know I listened to a podcast interview with the CEO of Airbnb, and they do I can't remember what it is. It's $250 million a day in rental income to Airbnb, and it's holy cow! And I think they laid off 4,000 employees, and they were still profitable, because it's just there's just so much money coming in from it.
Yeah, I do. There's ordinances that are happening and stuff like that. So we'll see where that all goes. But one thing that's nice about laws is there's always ways around them. So we'll just see how that happens.
I can never get how a city could tell you you can or can't rent your house at, like what you can do. I think that's kind of wild.
Yeah, you think that until your neighbor teaches classes in their driveway and the music's so loud that you can't hear your own TV that you have to call the city on them, right? And then you're like, okay, ordinances aren't that bad. I've had to use a decimeter before to get certain things fixed locally because I was like, I knew when the end of my workday was at least, but it was like, ordinances are a good thing, I think. But yeah, I understand though. It's like, who actually owns property? Well, the United States of America owns all your property technically. It somewhere. I mean, they can tax you on all of it at least. So
right, it's kind of wild that way. So kind of wrapping this up a little bit, tell me a little bit about kind of like the vision for Scavo Media in the next 5-10 years. Like, do you want to grow an in-house team? Do you want to have multiple locations? Do you just like keeping it small? Like, what's kind of the vision for you as you continue on here?
I've got ideas to pitch to people. I know that it just seems that, and it's weird being a millennial in my age, but so many people of my age and then slightly, they don't want to have bosses and they want to work for themselves. And healthcare stuff getting worked out to where you don't have to, you're not enslaved to a corporation so that you don't die, right? That's a whole thing in itself, but the idea of building something where everybody can work for themselves, but we all work together, of something like that, some sort of collective type of thing, sounds interesting to me. I know that I need to do something. It's at a, all right, next thing point. What that is for sure, I don't know. We're pushing certain services because those are the easiest ones for us to scale and then sell other services once we're in, right? But long term, not totally sure what we're going to do yet. And also diversifying too. Marketing's one thing. The houses is another. Always open to a product, an actual product or service that, I just put the money behind and we make happen. But I can't tell you for sure what's going to show up in the next, you never know. Have you ever seen The Castaway?
Yes.
When the porta potty comes offshore and then the line, he's like, you never know what the tide's going to bring in. And that's how I think when you're in the wild west of owning your own business, that's what it feels like, is we have a new version of the Wild West, where there's no bosses, you're not a part of a union or anything like that. That era, I think, went away for a little bit. Maybe it'll probably come back. But that's what it feels like, is you should never know what's coming around the corner. I had 2 big clients reach out to me in the last 2 weeks where I was like, didn't know those were coming. So
yeah, keeping things interesting and open. I think that's always a great mantra to go along there. So for people that are wanting to learn more about you, about the services you guys offer, where can people find out more about Scavo Media?
Scavomedia.com, SCAV as in Victor O, media.com.
Perfect. Well, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate the time, and I'm sure there will be more conversations. We were talking for a long time before, so I'm glad we I'm glad we could get in on the pod. So I appreciate you for coming out.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, if you made it this far, this is another episode of the Rhymes with the Odd podcast. My name is Ryan Snaadt. It rhymes with odd. Make sure to give us a 5-star review if you're listening this far, or subscribe on YouTube and Spotify. We'll catch you in the next episode. Peace.